Hey everyone, welcome back to the Bright Hill channel. So this is my go-kart. You may remember it from a couple weeks ago. The last update, I was able to drive it down my driveway, at least partially, which was an interesting thing. With this belt set up, it basically just burned the belt the entire way down. And yeah, I kind of determined that it's not going to work. So I went on Amazon and I spent some money. Here's the stuff that I got. Actually, there's a ton of stuff on this table. I haven't really been in here for a couple weeks at this point. Snap ring pliers, those will be necessary in a minute. This is a go-kart clutch and chain. This is a chain brake because I need this to be able to size the chain. This is a sprocket, I don't know. Basically, this goes on the axle and the sprocket bolts to it. This is a sprocket, and I think that's it. That should be enough to be able to get this thing to work. I haven't unboxed any of it yet. I also have a new vise. Thank you to my father for buying that for me for Christmas. Yeah, so some work to be done here today. It's yeah, it's finally warm. We have been getting an absolute mound of snow. Let me try to give you the grand tour here, but a lot of it's actually melted. I honestly think this has been reduced by maybe 6 inches, but you can see the barbecue over there has not been brushed off. We've got a decent amount of snow over the past couple weeks, and it's made for an unpleasant time outside. Thankfully today it's dripping a little bit. Let's get to work. So first thing I'm going to do is take off all of the old stuff. Thankfully I made it in a way that it is fairly easily removable, but all this stuff is going to come off. The pulley, the pulleys, I guess, the big one and the small one, the attachment thing that I have going here and the belt need to come off. Got to unbox all these new parts, slap them on and hope for the best, I guess. The biggest thing I need to do though with the clutch is we need to have active throttle control because otherwise the clutch is going to be engaged at all times. At the moment, the engine, I mean, it's a GC160, it's from a power washer, so they kind of anticipate that you're going to be full throttle or close to it at all times. So the engine doesn't like to run at anything less than full throttle, which means we would be getting, theoretically, full speed all the time, which is not going to work well for my health. We have some snowbanks to crash into if I do end up having to bail, but I hope that that doesn't have to be the case. So all that stuff I just talked about, hand throttle, or some super rudimentary way to just like go up and down, and that'll be good for today. Hopefully. All right, let's go. So I got to admit, I pieced this together after just researching on Amazon for maybe an hour or so, and I'm very pleased to say that everything seems to be coming together. So the chain came with the clutch, so I knew that the chain would be adequate for the clutch. It's a Tenant Tech, I guess. Tenant Tech. I don't know. It's Amazon stuff. Hopefully it's decent. Came with some tools, although, yeah, I mean, how difficult can it be to put a clutch on? I will soon find out, I guess. The sprocket and the adapter piece came separately, but they just so happen, the sprocket's a little sharp, to line up basically perfectly. It's almost like I planned that. And then the chain as well, thankfully, appears to slot into the sprocket without any issues. So yeah, we're good. The chain is actually a little bit smaller than I thought, but in terms of overall size, it's more than enough for this application. As you can kind of see, it's okay, it's hard to get an angle on it, but I have way too much chain, so I'm glad that I bought that chain brake. Yeah, happy to say, so far, everything that I bought on Amazon is of reasonable quality. These, I got to admit, the spring in them is a little bit weaker than I thought it would be, but as long as they work to get the snap ring off of this so that I can oil it properly, I don't really care. So I guess that's that. I just got to slap all this stuff together, pull the other stuff off, and I'll get back to you. All right, I've been speed running this. The clutch is on. One thing that occurred to me is that these probably have a specific direction that they go, but we'll figure that out in a bit. The sprocket is on, the axle is tight once again. That was a lot of effort. The clutch is actually fairly easy to just place on there, and I had to use my own little custom washer setup so that it doesn't have too much forward and backwards movement. Literally all that I need to do now is cut the chain and then get it on there right. The alternative is literally cutting it if I can't get it to break. So after that, we're going to do some throttle work. I think I'm going to try to use a spring because I want this thing to return automatically and not do what it currently does, which is just stay wherever you put it. So we need to have a little bit of spring in that throttle, otherwise it's going to get stuck and I'm going to die. But first, before I even attempt that, we're going to make sure that the whole chain and clutch setup works. I'll jack the back of this up and then we'll see if it spins the wheels. So this is going to be exciting. Stick with me for another moment. Okay, chain is on, and I will admit I am new to this chain stuff, so that's probably too much chain tension, but we will find out. Honestly, when I was putting it together, I was like, oh, it's going to be tight, and then now it's super loose. I also bent one link like an idiot, so yeah. I gotta say though, really cheap Amazon chain breaker, not terrible. Gigantic Mastercraft Maximum Vice, also not terrible. So I got this thing up on a jack because I'm going to start it up and see what happens. The chain might fly off and directly contact my brain. I may die, but we will find out the hard way. Let's give this thing a rev, get it warmed up. And yeah, I'm nervous, honestly. I hope it works. And there's only really one way to find out. Oh my goodness, it's so rickety. Okay. So I think we all saw what happened there. The chain jumped off immediately. So I got to do a better job of lining this up. I might just flip that around. I thought it was fairly reasonably aligned, but obviously not. Yeah, that's my fault. Also, the chain definitely needs to be tightened. I need to take another couple links out of it to get it perfect. Which is not a big deal. So that's another thing on the to-do list here. One thing I noticed, I was playing around with this a little bit as it was warming up just to get it to run the way I wanted to. I managed to get it to slow the idle a lot, but the interesting thing is that the clutch was still spinning wildly. So I'm not sure if I've done something wrong or there's something else going on here. Basically, once I get the chain hooked up again and the proper alignment for it, which might take a bit of time here, we're going to give her a test ride. What I don't want to do is have it go full throttle and then just rip down the driveway and then murder me on a snowbank or something. And I also don't want to burn out the clutch by having it stop too low or something like that. So I have to do something with this throttle. Thankfully, we have a little bit of a hookup here, so I might be able to drill a hole in this, have a cable, and then have that be pulled up and down. One thing I did notice is that it does pop and bang when you go over the full throttle limit there, so that's pretty cool. Here we go. It may just relieve me, or the chain might just jump. Let's find out. Oh, it totally works! Yes! It works! Yes! Oh my goodness. Okay, throttle cable time. That is the chain setup finished, boys. Basically what I discovered was because I had it jacked up, the cross member was not in fully tensioned. So now that I've taken one extra link out, it is nice and tight. I think that's going to be perfect. The reason why is because this engine mount has a bit of flex in it, and yeah, not quite perfect. We definitely need some kind of guard on this chain because I don't want to get whipped in the head or something. This thing should protect me from a lot of it, but you never know. I mean, chain guards exist for a reason. I should probably make one. I will, but first, we need to make a throttle control because I will not go down the road with an uncontrolled throttle. I don't want to die, so that's next on the menu. As I've discovered, this Honda engine is actually a nice engine. I'm used to the crappy gas engines where they have to be full throttle to start, but now that this thing's been warmed up a little bit, it's fairly easy to just get it to go. I think this is actually going to be a pretty fast setup. So a smaller sprocket on the axle would mean that it's faster, but less torque. But what I wanted to do was go somewhere in between. I think I got that with this medium-sized sprocket. Hopefully it's good. Again, I don't know. This whole setup, I mean, with the tools, which you can see I'm using in my vise over there, was about 150 bucks. So in total, the Go-Kart is maybe 250-ish to make all this, most of it being back here, but around 250 bucks to put this together. Kind of worth it. Okay, once we get the throttle sorted, the next thing is probably to lengthen the steering shaft because I need a little bit more steering than what I currently get. The like 3 inches or so there is not much. That's more like high-speed steering, but you don't get enough to really be able to do anything. Okay, so I took it for a little drive down the driveway. You can see there's some extra marks there. And yeah, it actually does work quite well. The chain jumped off again, but that was after I turned myself into a snowbank by accident, and I was revving it a little bit to see kind of how it would go. Naturally, it actually does spin the big wheels on the back. So, yeah, we need better steering. We do need brakes as well. It's dangerous as heck without brakes. And the alignment on the chain, while not perfect, is obviously also not close enough to making this right. So honestly, I need a whole new rear axle. I need to just buy like a quarter or 3/4 bar, cut it to length, drill the holes that I need, and then just like slot it in. Because this whole like setup there ain't good, and I need to, basically how I have this is I had a hole for my previous pulley, that thing over there, and I've just set one of the screws into that in order to hook it into the axle, which is less than ideal, so definitely have some work to do in that regard. But that's more future stuff. The engine is running great. It purrs, it backfires, it shoots flames. Honestly, that might actually make my last statement of running great an oxymoron because shooting flames and backfiring is not ideal, but what's happening is it's hitting the governor, so. And the gas that's in here is bloody ancient. I think it's at least a year, maybe 2 years old. I have been refilling it from my infinity stock of gas, but honestly, that stuff is ancient too, so it definitely needs some premium. Throttle cable, let me tell you what I've got going on. So I found this in my parts stash. It's a seat cable, if I believe the back seat cable from the Infiniti G35 Coupe, and it also has this attached to it as well. So just so you can kind of see what's going on. Basically the mechanism is you pull here, down on this, and that thing, it pops down and it pulls that out. But we don't really need this whole handle set up, so I think I'm just going to take that piece off of there, take that off of there, and then I've got to drill into the OG Honda handle, which is unideal, but I don't really see any other good way to do this. I also found a little spring, and I keep losing it, but this little spring here, which I can cut, it's basically 2 springs for my purposes. So one of these, I'm not sure which one, probably the small one, is going to go here, and it'll keep the handle down basically in its natural position. The ideal state of this basically is off. So when I pull the throttle, I need it to go on. That's what I'm trying to do. We'll see how that works. This is just a safety thing because if the throttle gets stuck wide open, this is dangerous. I don't really want to die today. I mean, tomorrow maybe, but today, not really. So, I got to do that to stay safe. When it comes to the actual mechanism, unfortunately, this is not very long, and it will not reach the steering wheel. So I'm going to keep hunting around for more stuff. But if that's all I can do, then we're going to do a hand throttle, but it'll be like down on the side, like here, say, and just like push and pull forwards to make it go faster and slower. Or faster, I guess, so it should default to slower. Okay, so this is my throttle cable setup, basically what I was talking about. So we have a small spring here, which holds it into the idle position. That little, oh goodness, you can't see bloody anything. That little switch at the back, that is a kill switch. So currently it's not actually possible to press it with my current throttle setup, which is lovely. But anyway, so this is just screwed into there, nice and solidly mounted to this, and that is cable tied down, 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 and now we have a throttle position thing. Basically what happens is I can grab this, which I have mildly modified by cutting the ends off to give it a little bit more travel, and I cut a big hole out of it as well to give it more travel, but it doesn't go back far enough, unfortunately. So I got to work on that. I think I might just need to cut a little bit off this handle or something in order to get it to come out more. But anyway, so basically what happens is I pull, okay, this is a bit difficult. I pull on the handle and this moves. It's tough. Yeah, that spring, there's quite a stiff one. I could loosen it by cutting some of the rungs off, but that's the gist of it. So I pull and it releases, I let go and it pulls itself down back to idle. So that's pretty much exactly what I wanted, except for the lack of kill switch, and this is not a good throttle handle. The unfortunate thing is it goes close to the steering wheel, but not quite. This is pretty much as far as it'll go. So then I started thinking about pedals, and I'm like, well, maybe I can make a pedal before it gets dark. This is honestly the only day I have to work on this. It looks pretty light, but it is way darker than it was earlier. So I need to get this finished. So I've just been rushing around digging through my parts bins, trying to find some more pedals. I have an Infinity G35 throttle pedal and brake pedal, but they're huge, so that's not going to work. The basic idea, though, with a pedal is that I could just attach it, especially if it's pre-made. I can attach it here and then run a cable from this to a high point on the pedal. You push down the pedal and it pulls the cable away, and that means it goes. So that would be extremely satisfying to get that done today, but I'm not so sure. I think before we do that, I just want to take it for another ride because I've been having so much fun working on this stuff. I gotta say, clutch setup, very pleased with it, except for the derailing. I will have to realign it at some point. I guess it's not quite right. I guess you can kind of see it there. It's not quite right. I did oil the chain, by the way. This is a bit of a terrible climate for riding something that is completely bare metal, but I oiled the chain, so hopefully that keeps it from getting too rusty or rusty at all. It can't get stiff. I may have to grease the chain too. I don't know. Should we give it a go? I'll show you what it's like to drive this thing down the driveway. One-handed steering, one hand on the throttle, and another hand on my heart because it's going to be a little dangerous. Okay, let's consider that to be a failure. The problem with it is that it actually doesn't go high enough. So the throttle engagement needs to be pretty much all the way up, and it only goes to about here, which is not enough to actually do anything except raise the idle. So fail, basically. But, I mean, I did drive it a little bit. The chain's still jumping off, even with the one link missing, which sucks. So I'm going to have to realign it, I guess. I don't know. Part of the problem could also be that this engine plate is very jumpy, which I don't like, but it's kind of how it is at the moment. You can see that it's fairly... Oh, well, it's feeling strong now, but usually it's quite bouncy, and when the engine is going, it bounces like crazy. So, yeah, fail, kind of. What I think might work is just setting it to a speed and then riding down the road with it. So I'm going to try that real quick. This is such a bad idea. All right. I'm getting stuck in the snow here. That's the problem. So I don't know if you would have been able to see that just because I recorded it vertically, but I was able to go up and down the street with several chain jumps. The problem I'm running into is I have to keep adding throttle to get through the deep snow. You can see in some places where chewing it up, this matches the tread of my snowblower tires. Unfortunately, the chain keeps jumping, which is a big problem. Every time I rev it up a little too much, the chain jumps, and then we run into problems. Also, apparently I've lost a nut. How did that happen? But I'm having a lot of fun with this thing. It really is a lot of fun. It's very, very sketchy, and having to reach back to use the throttle is also sketchy. You'll probably notice all the weight is in the back. There's like nothing but frame up front, and yeah. So there's a little bit of a clear patch of road there, just at the top of the screen. So I'm going to try again to rip as much as I can up that, perhaps without making the neighbors upset, and we'll see what I can do. But this is I gotta check every single nut and bolt before I do that, now that I see one is dropped. Oh man. Okay, so next big thing, because throttle is causing me issues, obviously I have to redesign that whole mechanism, and I need to realign this chain. That's got to be a priority at this point. Part of the problem is that this coupler like moves. The faster we're going, the more the chain wobbles. So yeah. Anyways, let me see what I can do. Well, I think I've pissed off my neighbors enough. The snow is actually causing more of an issue than I thought it would, so I'm gonna have to wait until it clears up a bit. I should be able to work on this thing again, maybe on Saturday, so you might see that in this video, you might not, but yeah, you got to do some chain realigning. I figured out the issue. Yeah, it's definitely that coupler on the left there. So basically what happens is anytime the axle gets spinning too fast, it jumps the chain off the sprocket, and yeah, that's pretty much that. So it's jumping the chain off the rear axle sprocket, which means that I'm probably not going to be able to fix that issue without getting an entirely new rear axle, which is something I don't really want to do. That being said, it's something I should do, so uh, yeah, that is also going to mean having to figure out how to get that nail out of the rear tire that holds it in place. Yeah, I don't know. With every sort of design like this, especially when I basically just have to the entire thing, it looks cool, it drives, but it has problems, and some of them are just au naturel. There's no way to get around it. Like in my ideal world, that piece there, the connection between the two separate axles, would be over on the side over here. But in order to fix my current problem, I basically have to rebuild the entire rear axle, which is not a great, I think, not a great thing. I also need to order 2 more bearings, possibly new wheels, and also the 3/4 shaft. So that's not necessarily the highest priority. Throttle cable is definitely something that is necessary, but you can drive it without. As long as the chain stays on, this thing is an absolute rocket. I went down my street, just out here and then to the left. I went down. I know it feels faster because you're so low to the ground, but I just kicked up the throttle basically full to see what it would do on some clearer pavement, and it shot the chain after about a second, but man, was I going quick. I've created a kart that, even with a small 160cc, is faster than it should be considering the sketchiness of its components. And I like that. I like that a lot. I was worried it was going to be super slow, but I'm very pleased to report that it is actually quite fast. I'm curious to see how good it is on dry pavement. I mean, those swamper tires on the back there kind of lend itself more to off-road. But pavement is going to be interesting. Maybe I can actually like go before the chain jumps off. I don't know, but might be time to clean up for today. Got some stuff to do inside, so I'll see you again soon. Major progress today.